Amy Bloom, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you.
Tell us about your new book, Lucky Us. What's it about?
There's a lot that happens. A friend of mine said, your book is like a medicine ball. It's small but dense. There's a lot in it. So it's about two half-sisters who meet as teenagers and leave their home in Ohio so that Iris, the older, can make her mark in the world in Hollywood as a starlet, which doesn't work out as they had hoped. And they find themselves working as servants in a very fancy, posh family on Long Island. And then more things happen, and World War II ensues, and more people come into the story, and we follow their relationship through its ups and downs and betrayals.
Now, you've given each chapter heading a particular musical reference. Why have you done that, and how are we to take the music in terms of its relationship to the narrative?
The music was so compelling. It's music of such a great period.
So we're in the 1940s.
We're in the 1940s, and whatever kind of music you liked, swing, jazz, pop, country and western, it's an explosion of real creativity and experimentation in America. So that was part of it, and listening to it while I was writing was certainly the soundtrack for writing the book. And then when it came to the chapter titles, I had all these great song titles rattling around in my head, and I thought, I can use the lines from the songs, I can use the lyrics as chapter titles. And I thought, if you haven't heard the song, it works very well as a sentence. Spring will be a little late this year. And if you have heard the song, you get the bonus of hearing the melody in the background.
Absolutely. I think Margaret Atwood did this with her book, was it Alias Grace, where she gave each chapter heading the name of a different kind of quilt, because
Yes.
quilting was integral to the narrative, and there was a kind of sinister overtone to the names of some of the quilts.
Right.
And how they related to that murder story. It's a very effective thing to do. But one of the things that I like about it is that for me the music of the 1940s is jazz.
Right.
And I think that that's particularly appropriate because your two girls are improvising their lives exactly like jazz improvisers, aren't they?
I think they are, and also there's a jazz singer in the novel.
Clara.
And Clara also offers herself, both as a singer and as a person, the art of improvisation.
Yes. But also, I'm interested in the title, Lucky Us. So we're talking about the use of these song titles and how they may or may not relate to the story. But Lucky Us seems to me a title that, again, is open to interpretation and on one level is meant ironically, surely.
Well, yes, it is. On the other hand, you can't really assess a person's life until it's over. And so if you have avoided disaster, of course it's bad luck to have come near disaster, but good luck to have avoided it. And as I say, there's a great American blues song, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no kind of luck at all. And that was very much on my mind when I wrote Lucky Us. I thought it is about the good and the bad luck.
But you push that a little bit further in this story because the younger of the two half-sisters actually becomes a tarot reader in a beauty salon. Tell us about how you gave her that particular role, because that's all about playing with the idea of, do we make our own luck? Do we have a fate? Do we have a destiny?
There are very few pieces that are autobiographical in the novel, but when I was 17, and I would spend a lot of time in Manhattan, in the Village, I was going out for I don't know, drinks, I guess, with friends of mine, and there was a lady who had her psychic shop on the sidewalk near a place called Sandolino's, and she just asked me if I would just stay there for a minute. She just had to step out. So she stepped out, and I just stood there, and she came back, and she said, "Did you steal anything?" I said, "No." She said, "Did you go inside?" I said, "No." She said, "You have an honest face." I said, "Thank you." She said, "I could use somebody here on Friday and Saturday nights handing out my flyers." And so I became a shill for Madame Rosa, and I would stand there going, $5, $5, Madame Rosa sees all and knows all in both worlds. and you won't be sorry. And she was a great teacher, actually.
She was a great teacher of fiction.
Yes.
That's what she was teaching.
Yes, absolutely. What she said is, look and see. Look and see what people show you. Who has the nice shoes? Who has the nice hands? Who has the haircut? Who has the jewelry? Who looks like they should be wearing jewelry, but they're not? She was a great observer of human nature. And
so you spruiked for her, but did you ever sit down and actually read the tarot and just completely make it up?
Well, one doesn't like to say completely make it up, but based on observation, and she would just say to me, she would say, come on, throw out the cards, make a Celtic cross. And so I would practice because, as good as she wasn't always as busy as she would have liked to have been. So there were some times when we had a spare half hour and she would have me practice. And I feel like I learned a lot, not about being a psychic, which I am not, but about observing people, which I do like to do.
Absolutely. Now, Ida, the elder of the two half-sisters, is a very ambitious young woman. She's quite self-absorbed and ruthless in her ambition. In fact, I'm tempted to kind of see her as a bit of a narcissist. I know you've been a psychotherapist. I don't know whether you think that Ida would be classifiable as a narcissist. She dreams of going to Hollywood, and she gets there, but she never really makes it past starlet quality. Why doesn't she make it?
Well, I don't think that that's necessarily a judgment on Iris and her acting ability. I think that she's actually a very talented person, talented as a performer, and continues to be talented as a performer even when she's no longer making movies. But for one of the rare moments in her life, love conquers all, and lust conquers all, and she makes an error in judgment in a universe in which she doesn't really know the rules.
And in fact, partly that occurs, she's in Hollywood and she goes to this extraordinarily glamorous party, which you play out with a very kind of charged eroticism, a very sustained eroticism. And you show us a side of Hollywood that I've never seen written about. Can you describe the scene in the book, the orgy scene in Hollywood?
Well, when I was researching Hollywood in the 40s, excuse me, one of the things that struck me is how closeted so many of the great actors and actresses were. And it wasn't that it was necessarily a secret to their nearest and dearest. The studio knew, the publicity managers knew. People were constantly arranging marriages so that people would not be suspected of being gay. And one of the ways in which people managed was to have these parties, which were partially for sexual liaisons, partially for social networkings, partially just places where people could just talk about their lives as they actually were. And so what the women called the sewing circles were in fact these big splashy parties with orchestras and servants and by invitation only. And of course this is the world in which there are no selfies and there are no cell phones, and they were truly private and I have to say seemed to me to be truly decadent and truly glamorous.
They really were, weren't they? And when you were writing about Hollywood and about those sorts of hidden networks, were you also hoping that the reader would think about the nature of celebrity and fame today and how much has changed and perhaps how much hasn't changed?
I don't worry that much about what my reader thinks. I feel that my reader is smart and is a partner and will bring whatever they want to the story. But there were a couple of issues that I was very mindful of that in writing about them in Lucky Us also resonated with the present. And one was certainly celebrity and the public and the private and the hiding of the private and how people make those decisions. Much in terms of what they wish to reveal, when do they reveal it, why do they reveal it when they do. I still think in the United States it will be a long time before a leading man comes out, and that's not because none of them are gay. And similarly with politics, when I was researching Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt for the novel, I was really struck by the level of vitriol and vituperation and personal hatred that the two of them engendered, which I think of as being sort of particular to President Obama and the First Lady, but turns out to be a really ugly and persistent thread, certainly in American right-wing politics. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt was hanged in effigy at country clubs all across America, and people made buttons that said, "I hate Eleanor," as their only political statement.
Now, just on a sort of different facet of luck, or the lack thereof, you take us to Germany after the war, when the country has been bombed to smithereens, and you have a character, Gus, who has the extraordinary bad luck through a set of complex circumstances to, he actually chooses to go from America to Germany when Germany is a husk, when there is nothing there. His timing is appalling. His luck is terrible. What did you want to explore by taking an American from America and dumping him in the middle of all that chaos?
Well, I think there were a couple of things that I wanted to do. One is I love Gus as a character, and so seeing him in war situations made me very happy as a writer, because he is a resilient person and he's also very funny. But part of what I wanted to do was say, this really happened. In the United States, in World War II, we interned 11,000 Germans. And they were not German prisoner of wars. They were people who lived in this country, often who had come as very small children, and been in our country for 30 or 40 years. And in fact, that self-deportation, as it was called, in which people were offered the opportunity to leave the camps and go to Germany, was a real thing, in which we gave them something like $50 and dropped them off on the train tracks on the German side of Switzerland and said, "Good luck.
See you later."
And that was it. And I wanted to tell that story because I haven't seen that. I hadn't seen that story anywhere in fiction. So I did want to write about that. And I also wanted then to give Gus the opportunity to think about who he was and how he wanted to reinvent himself one more time.
Well, we're lucky to have had you here today. Thank you very much, Amy Bloom.
Thanks for having me.